I knew the ship was sinking the day the VP of Logistics used the server rack as a coat hanger. That rusted beige tower wheezing in the corner like it had emphysema wasn't just legacy hardware. It was a liability with a blinking LED and a death wish. I'd been feeding that Frankenstein beast for 12 years, swapping drives like CPR, splicing network cables with borrowed tape, and praying to the Ethernet gods during every storm. And yet, there he was, draping his Patagonia windbreaker across it like it was a damn coat tree. "Don't worry," he grinned. "All Bertha's still humming. If it ain't broke," and that was the chant of the cult I worked for. If it ain't broke. You could carve it in stone and mount it above the bathroom urinals, right between the Think Safety poster and the broken soap dispenser. I wasn't just some bitter IT drone screaming into the void. I had a plan. A detailed, beautifully color-coded migration proposal. Move our creaking infrastructure into the 21st century, finally decommission that Windows 2008 relic, and set up actual cloud redundancy, instead of praying the janitor didn't unplug our only NAS to vacuum. I presented it during the Q3 budget meeting. Lights dimmed, PowerPoint queued. I'd even worn my serious blazer instead of the usual hoodie to look managerial. I didn't even make it past slide 6. Steve from procurement, who once asked me if we still needed antivirus now that everything's digital, chuckled and muttered, "Guess we're just fear-mongering again." Then the CFO chimed in, "We really need to prioritize upgrades for the break room. That espresso machine's older than my marriage." Laughter from everyone. Even Claire from HR came to me crying when her emails stopped syncing because she was still on POP3. Now, I know this ain't your usual tick-tock tale of manifesting Ferraris or quitting corporate life to make slime for a living. But if you've ever fought to be heard, watched clowns in suits play Jenga with your sanity, or just want to see poetic justice smothered in melted karma, stick around. And hey, if this story punches you in the gut the way it did me in real time, that subscribe button. I'm trying to hit 10,000 subs so I can finally tell my mom I've made it on the internet without her asking if I joined a pyramid scheme. Anyway, back to the battlefield. I left that meeting with my proposal under my arm like a rejected term paper and walked straight into the server room. The hum that used to soothe me now sounded like a countdown. I stood there and watched the rack lights blink like Morse code from a dying planet. I knew what was coming. I started logging every outage, not just in the corporate ticket system, where entries mysteriously disappeared if they looked too negative, but in my own encrypted private log. I screenshotted error messages. I noted dates, timestamps, user complaints, every corrupted shipment invoice, every file that mysteriously vanished from our laughable local backup drive. I wasn't sabotaging them, I was documenting the inevitable. And I smiled, because I knew they'd ignore me. I counted on it. The more they laughed me off, the deeper I buried the roots of my plan. They wanted the illusion of stability? Fine, I'd play along. But the day that illusion shattered, and it would, I wasn't going to be anywhere near that burning wreck. I was going to be sipping cold brew in a new office with working air conditioning, real-time monitoring, and a boss who understood why RAID 0 was not a backup strategy. And when the storm hit, we're going to remember the smirks. It started with the email server deciding, arbitrarily, that Tuesdays were for suffering. No pattern, no warning, just send/receive spinning like a slot machine with no payout. Staff would storm my cubicle with panic in their eyes, screaming about lost client correspondence like the system ran on fairy dust and good vibes. Every time I fixed it, I documented the root cause, timestamped the resolution, screenshotted the errors, and saved everything to my personal encrypted backup. Nothing malicious, just insurance. Then the shipping database slowed to a crawl. It wasn't just lagging, it was molasses in January. Inventory lookups timed out, invoices printed with missing data, and somewhere in Indiana, a 14-ton truck of fertilizer showed up at a beauty supply store because of a corrupted address record. Again, I traced it, documented it, stored the evidence. They called it quirky. Quirky, that was their favorite damn word. As if our entire infrastructure was a charming old uncle with a limp, and a flask instead of a Rube Goldberg nightmare 2 bad sectors away from implosion. One Friday morning, the RAID array barked out a warning. One of the drives in our so-called redundant system was blinking orange, smart status failing, read/write errors climbing like a bad stock ticker. I flagged it immediately, even offered to swap it out with a spare I kept in my own desk drawer. Guess what they did? Nothing. "You're always so intense about this stuff," said Martin, our director of operations, who once asked if RAM could be mailed over the internet. At that point, I stopped correcting people. I stopped caring. I started preparing. I began quietly downloading every script I'd ever written: cron jobs, maintenance tools, emergency failovers. All mine. Authored, timestamped, copied to a private Git repo. Just in case. My heart wasn't in it anymore. I wasn't fighting to save the system, I was mapping the route to my lifeboat. And then, like a divine middle finger from the universe, a recruiter slid into my inbox. Cybersecurity firm, mid-sized, funded, looking to build out a recovery division. "You ever worked on post-incident forensics?" she asked. I smiled. "Oh, honey, I live in post-incident." My coworkers shuffled through quarterly safety trainings and positive workplace webinars. I was having calls with the recruiter under the guise of extended lunch breaks. By week 2, I had a casual offer. By week 4, it had a number. And just when I thought I might slip out quietly, the main accounting portal went down during payroll processing. Database corruption. Again. It took me 4 hours to patch it manually, 4 hours of reconstructing lost invoice data from log fragments and partial backups like some goddamn digital archaeologist. When it was fixed, I walked into the break room looking for a glass of water and overheard Martin talking to the CFO. Yeah, it was another one of her mistakes. She's been off her game lately. Might be time for a new hire in IT. Someone more upbeat. Like I was a malfunctioning Roomba with a bad attitude. Didn't confront him. I didn't slam a door or send a strongly worded Slack. I just walked back to my desk, opened my encrypted logs, and backed up every single byte again. Because they thought I was the problem. But I was the only reason this whole place hadn't collapsed into digital rubble. And I was almost ready to stop being that reason. The meeting invite hit my inbox like a guillotine with a smiley face. Quarterly check-in, just a chat. Smiling face with smiling eyes, I already knew what it was. HR doesn't book surprise meetings with vague titles unless someone's about to get neutered with corporate jargon. I showed up to the beige conference room 5 minutes early. Laptop closed, coffee black, expression unreadable. Karen from HR was already there, smiling like a CVS receipt, long, forced, and utterly pointless. Next to her sat Martin, Mr. Windbreaker on the server himself, clutching a manila folder like it held the nuclear codes. They started with the compliments, like they always do. "We appreciate your dedication, such a valuable member of the team, love your tenacity." Then came the turn. But Karen said, with the tone of someone about to euthanize your dog, "We've noticed some changes in your demeanor lately." Martin leaned in, eager to throw his match into the gasoline. "Yeah, you've been kinda negative, resistant to feedback. Some people feel like you're not fostering a very collaborative energy." I tilted my head. Collaborative energy? Karen tapped her iPad like she was ordering a soy latte. "You flagged over 17 system alerts in the past 2 months. And some of your language, well, it's been labeled alarmist. Alarmist. Like I was shouting fire in a fireworks factory instead of pointing at the stack of lit fuses." Martin picked up the baton. "Look, we're not saying you're wrong about the infrastructure stuff. But the way you communicate it, it's creating disruption. That's not the culture we're trying to build here." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to crawl across the table and pull the power cord on his brain. Instead, I nodded slowly and folded my hands. "Got it. Less alarms, more good vibes. Noted." Karen smiled like she trained for hostage negotiations. "So, let's talk about your raise request." I already knew the answer, but I let them play it out. "We're in a tight budget cycle, and we really need everyone pulling together right now. So unfortunately, we're not in a position to approve any compensation changes at this time." Martin added, "Be more of a team player, and we'll revisit it next quarter." Team player. That was the moment. Not the email outages, not the gaslighting, not even the raid collapse they blamed on my attitude. It was those 2 words, team, player. I walked out of that room and straight to my desk. My hands were steady. My breath was calm. But something had cracked, not snapped, cracked, like the first fault line before a tectonic shift. I opened my notepad and wrote exactly 3 lines. "Accept recovery firm offer finish offsite log encryption draft 2-week notice." But hold, because I wasn't going to run. I was going to walk, slow, deliberate, and surgical. They wanted upbeat. I'd smile through my exit. They wanted collaborative energy. I'd hand them a perfectly useless playbook. And when their kingdom of duct tape and denial finally crumbled, I'd be sipping coffee on a video call with my new team, watching the embers glow. This wasn't just a resignation. This was premeditated deliverance. I handed in my resignation with the kind of poise that makes narcissists squirm. 2 weeks' notice. No drama, no tirade. Just a single-page PDF with a smiley at the end and a bullet point list so short it could have been a post-it. Karen blinked at it like she expected a breakup novel. Martin gave me a half-hearted sorry to see you go, while visibly checking his phone under the table. I was betting the over-under on how long it would take for him to reassign my workload to the intern who once unplugged the router, because the blinking lights were distracting. I spent my final 2 weeks building the illusion of compliance. I created a handover document so benign it should have come with elevator music. Routine backups run daily, I wrote, omitting that they routinely failed. Email queue clears every hour, I noted, skipping the part about the memory leak that occasionally choked the system into a coma. I explained nothing. I documented less. They never asked. On my second-to-last day, I scheduled a final full system snapshot under the guise of performance testing. Nobody batted an eye. I quietly pulled log archives, config files, disk error reports, everything I'd been meticulously collecting over the last 6 months, and secured it in my private vault. Was it legal? Completely. Was it helpful? Immeasurably. Was it revenge? Not yet. They gave me a cheap send-off in the break room. Store-brand cupcakes, a generic farewell card signed with corporate apathy, and someone even brought sparkling cider like I was going off to college. Martin clapped me on the back. Thanks for everything. You kept the lights on, huh? Karen chimed in. We'll do just fine, don't worry. We've got good documentation now. I almost choked on my lukewarm cider. We're smiling, genuinely, stupidly, triumphantly, as if shedding me was an act of evolution. And I smiled back, because they had no idea they were walking barefoot into a minefield of their own neglect. I left the building with my box of desk junk, 1 potted succulent, 3 empty Red Bull cans I refused to recycle, and a Funko Pop of Ripley from Aliens. My final act, deleting the private Slack channel I'd created for myself. #server hospice. At night, I cracked a beer in my apartment, logged into my new work email, and found my first direct deposit from the recovery firm. A real salary, real benefits. A boss who didn't think Raid was a violent video game. The firm was already onboarding new clients. Word was, a big case was coming in from the logistics sector, someplace local. I had a funny feeling I knew exactly who that was. And I hoped, truly, sincerely hoped, hadn't touched the server since I left. Because Bertha, she was dying. And this time, I wasn't going to be there with jumper cables and a prayer. It was a Wednesday in July, the kind of Ohio summer day where the air feels like microwaved soup and the sky turns bruised purple just before it decides to ruin someone's life. I was 2 iced coffees deep and finishing a penetration test report for a client when my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls. 1 voicemail, all from numbers I hadn't seen since my last cupcake and sarcasm exit from the logistics clown car. Then came the email. Subject line, urgent, please respond ASAP sender, Martin Thompson @ com. I didn't even open it at first. I just sat there and smiled. That specific kind of slow, crooked smile people get when their ex texts, you up, 3 years after ghosting you for your best friend. The voicemail was worse. Martin sounded like a man being swallowed by his own colon. Hey, I know it's been a while. We're experiencing some issues with the server. There was a storm, and some things aren't loading. If you happen to still have that backup script or know how to, stabilize it, give me a call. Please. I knew exactly what happened. That aging, overheating tin they called a server room didn't stand a chance. Summer lightning plus cheap surge protector equals silicon crematorium. Bertha wasn't just dead, she was fried. From what I later pieced together, the storm rolled in around 2:30 p.m. Lightning cracked nearby. Power flickered once, twice. No ups. No shutdown script. Fans whirled into overdrive trying to keep the RAID array from melting into a puddle of solder. By 2:41 p.m., the system was fully unresponsive. By 2:45, all 5 drives showed errors. By 3:10, the entire shipment database was gone. By 4 o'clock, the accounting team realized payroll files were corrupted. By 5 o'clock, the CEO had been briefed, and not once during those chaotic hours did anyone think, hey, maybe we should have listened to the person who said this would happen a year ago. I read Martin's email. Twice. It was like watching someone try to bandage a bullet wound with a wet napkin, trying to get the raid back online, but the drives aren't being recognized. We don't have access to the historical logs. Those were also affected. Please let us know if you have any copies of the backup utilities, or if you'd be willing to help consult, even short term. We can pay. The we can pay part, that one made me laugh out loud. I did feel a twinge of guilt, not for leaving, hell no. For the people stuck there. The junior dev I trained, receptionist who always brought donuts on Fridays. Even Claire from HR who once asked me if the internet has a reset button. But then I remembered the performance review, the smirks, the cupcakes. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded the message to my new boss. Subject, new lead, possible recovery job, high priority. 15 minutes later, our biz dev rep was prepping a quote. Estimated data salvage from 5 dead drives with no offsite backups, $117,000. Rush fee included, non-negotiable. And while they scrambled like ants on a sugar high, trying to resurrect a system they never understood. I clicked archive on Martin's email and went back to writing scripts that actually saved people. Our recovery team gathered around the table, like surgeons prepping for an emergency organ transplant, except instead of kidneys. We're talking about 5 scorched drives and a logistics company hemorrhaging credibility by the minute. RAID 5, no parity snapshots, and local-only backups. Our lead engineer, Jake, muttered while flipping through the initial scan results. This is like someone duct taping their seatbelt and calling it custom safety architecture. I didn't say a word. Just watched the forensic analysis scroll across the screen, line by corrupted line. 3 drives were physically damaged. One had literal scorch marks near the SATA port. The controller had gone full kamikaze when the power surged. File structure was mangled, logs unreadable, partitions misaligned like a drunk Rubik's Cube. Still, there was hope. We had tools they'd never even dreamed existed. Bit-level recovery protocols, forensic imaging rigs, magnetically shielded clean rooms. If anyone could pull 80% of this mess back from the digital afterlife, it was us. I drafted the quote personally. $117,000. Flat fee, no discounts, no old employee courtesy, 50% upfront, non-refundable. Made sure we itemized everything in brutal clarity. Physical extraction of corrupted sectors, bitwise reconstruction decryption key reassembly. Assuming they remembered their own damn passwords. Priority queue processing client confidentiality protection. God knows what trash was on those email servers. Within the hour, our sales manager sent it over. 2 hours later, the reply came back. Subject, regarding recovery services, pricing discussion. Sender was their new CFO. I opened the email and immediately recognized the name. Trent Whitmore, of course. He was at the last holiday party I ever attended at that place, wearing a gold tie and drunkenly cornering people with crypto predictions. I remembered him because he asked if I could install a firewall on his Apple Watch. Now here he was, politely trying to wheedle the quote down like we were haggling over a Craigslist couch. In our long-standing relationship and the urgency of this situation, we'd appreciate it if you could revisit the pricing structure, especially since one of your team members has intimate familiarity with our systems. Nice try, Trent. I replied with a single sentence. Our pricing reflects the complexity and severity of your case. No sign-off, no emoji, no nostalgia. He pushed again. Asked if I could jump on a quick call to talk things through. Didn't even bother responding. Instead, I sent a Slack to our billing team. Hold invoice until deposit clears. Then green light recovery. No exceptions. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even petness. It was policy. My policy. They ignored me when I was the only one keeping their digital lungs pumping. Now they wanted to nickel and dime the people holding the defibrillator. Bittersweet, sure. Satisfying. Like popping bubble wrap on Judgment Day. As our team began prepping the clean room for drive imaging, I watched the confirmation ping across our payment dashboard. $58,500. Received. No note, no thanks. Just pure desperation. And somewhere, deep down, I hoped Martin was sitting in a conference room, sweating through his tie, realizing the person they dismissed as alarmist was now the gatekeeper to their entire company's past. They tried to bury it at first, classic damage control. I got wind of it when Jake forwarded me a link with no subject, just the headline. Regional logistics firm experiences system irregularities following routine maintenance. buried in the business section of a third-tier industry newsletter. Bland, sanitized, utterly full of shit. Statement from corporate read like it was written by a panic-stricken intern clinging to a thesaurus. We experienced a brief internal systems interruption during scheduled infrastructure maintenance. No client deliveries were impacted, and all essential functions remained stable. I nearly snorted coffee out my nose. No client deliveries impacted. Tell that to the auto dealership in Nebraska, whose shipment of parts got misrouted to a feedlot, or the hospital that never received its order of critical tubing. They tried to keep the story quiet, but logistics is a leaky boat when it comes to angry clients. One supplier posted on LinkedIn about their suspiciously delayed invoice history. Another customer, a mid-sized furniture chain, made a not-so-subtle tweet. Friendly reminder, back up your data, or pay 6 figures to people who did. Within days, rumors spread like electrical fires through the industry grapevine. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I just watched. From the comfort of my new office, open floor plan, working HVAC, a whiteboard that didn't smell like mildew, I sat through 2 client calls while news alerts pinged in the background. Then Claire, bless her, messaged me. You didn't hear it from me, but Martin's on stress leave and Trent hasn't been in the office since Tuesday. She followed it with a skull emoji. I thanked her vaguely and closed the chat. I wasn't going to gloat, not publicly, but internally. My satisfaction was dark, heavy, and slow-burning, like molasses laced with arsenic. These were the same suits who said I wasn't a team player, who told me to smile more, lighten up, stop catastrophizing. And now they were hiding from shareholders behind half-baked statements and empty conference chairs. Another headline hit the following morning. This one a little sharper. Data mismanagement at regional firm leads to contract losses. Investigations underway. Investigations. Plural. Apparently, one of their largest clients had requested an audit of their SLA compliance logs, which no longer existed. I didn't celebrate. I didn't buy champagne. But I did order a nicer office chair. One with lumbar support. Paid for it with the bonus I got after the recovery job was marked successful transfer complete. 82% data integrity confirmed. They could keep spinning their internal maintenance story. But the cracks were showing, and I knew exactly how deep those cracks ran. The wire cleared at 8:42 a.m. on a Thursday. No message, no follow-up, just the rest of the $117,000 landing with a digital thud. Payment confirmed. That was the signal. Our engineers began the full-scale recovery like a team of brain surgeons who knew the patient had already signed the DNR. Drives were dismantled, platters mounted, corrupted sectors mapped out like landmines. It took 6 days and 140 man-hours, but in the end, we salvaged 82% of the data. Client records, shipment logs, payroll stubs, even Martin's private archive folder, which was 90% duplicate spreadsheets and one disturbing selfie labeled Leadership Retreat. The official recovery report was sent Friday morning. Signed, sealed, delivered. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. At 2:11 p.m., my personal work line lit up. Internal number. One I didn't recognize until the voice cracked through on the other end. Hey, it's Martin. Of course it was. He sounded like a man trying to swallow his own spine. Look, I know this is awkward, but we're missing a backup. A specific archive from late 2022. Contracts, some vendor stuff, possibly client NDAs. It's not in the restored files. We really need it. I let the silence stretch. He filled it like a toddler at confession. If you happen to have access or know where it might have gone, I'd really appreciate it. Maybe you could help us out personally, just this once. That was rich. Personally. Same guy who once told me your tone isn't leadership material was now on the verge of tears, begging me to dig him out of the digital grave he helped shovel. I took a deep breath, leaned back in my new ergonomic chair, and spoke as evenly as I could. There's a secondary archive, air-gapped, proprietary format. You never authorized the tool I needed to decrypt it back then, so I stored it separately. Just in case. Exhaled like a man trying to find hope in a burning house. Is it still recoverable? Yes. Another long pause. Would you be willing to help us with it? I smiled. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Sure, I said. It'll be an additional 15%. New invoice incoming. Payment required before access. He didn't argue, just whispered okay and hung up like someone trying not to cry in a public restroom. We sent the invoice. They paid in 2 hours, $17,550. And just like that, the last piece clicked into place. Power, it wasn't in the server room, it never was. It was in knowing they'd built their kingdom on sand, and I was the only one who remembered where the water was. I took a walk that weekend, passed by the old office out of nothing but morbid curiosity. The building looked the same, but the soul was gone. New receptionist, tinted windows, the fake optimism of a company pretending everything was fine. I didn't go in. I just stood on the sidewalk for a minute, feeling the breeze, watching the reflection of traffic slide over the mirrored glass. And then I walked away. No smirk, no speech, just the quiet click of heels on concrete, leaving behind the graveyard of their own arrogance. Big thanks, you legends of the old office days. Subscribe to keep the switch-flicking chaos alive. Your ex-boss is shaking in their loafers.